Our next presenter is Edwin Spur, Jr., Clinical Information Librarian from AU UGA Medical Partnership. Edwin will be presenting Sieving, your search semi-automated citation screening for search strategy refinement.
I do realize now that my Achilles heel is coming up with 17-word titles for 5-minute talks. So I'm going to describe in just a couple of minutes work that's currently in progress in terms of trying to find a way to streamline the process of coming up with really complicated searches. So a lot of times when we're trying to do complicated searches, it's sort of hard to think about how to do that without just sort of using the eyeball test. And so hopefully coming up with a way to be a little more evidence-based than that. So many times when we think about what gold standard validation means, we think about, something in the context of building a brand new hedge, a brand new search filter, where we have this validation set, and then we test how well the search performs against that validation set. Now, this does enable us to do all kinds of sort of complicated things in terms of looking at sensitivity and specificity of a search. We really can dial our search in very well when we're doing this kind of framework. Unfortunately, this really only works when we have a validation set to begin with. So certainly if we're building a new hedge or something, we take the time to figure out what that validation set might be. But certainly when we're doing a search from scratch, even a complicated search like a systematic review, that's oftentimes not the case. We don't have this tool available to us. So what I propose instead is something I like to call bronze medal validation. So we don't have a validation set to begin with, but instead what we can do is we can use an application, like the application I'm describing just now, query PubMed with our initial search. Now what we do then is we then use that same eutils API to grab back a random set of citations. It is important that we think about doing a random set of citations, not just the few dozen most current or the few dozen best match citations, and then manually evaluate how well those citations meet our needs. And by doing that, we can divide those into a good pile and a bad pile and basically generate a validation set on the fly as we do that. And we can hopefully use that same small validation set to look not only at the performance of the search that we're starting off with, but if we're not really that happy with how well that search performs, we could think about, well, how do we come up with a better way of doing that search? Is there some way of sort of fooling around with terms so we can get it to work better? But again, we could take advantage of having a validation set and quickly do that process because, again, we could take advantage of using the eutils API and do this part automatically instead of having to do it manually and eyeball test it. So again, I keep saying eutils because that is the method this is going on. This application that I'm going to show you a couple screenshots in just a second is a live application, so please, by all means, feel free to bang on it, use it, tell me what you would like to be different. Probably going forward, they're going to have to figure out how well this actually works in practice, so I'm going to need lots of help in terms of figuring out how to do that. So here is a screenshot for this application that's in development. So I started off with a very sort of naive search looking for citations about HPV vaccination programs. Maybe information about how well they work, maybe information about how they're developed. And you could argue this is the kind of search commonly done by clinicians and by medical students. Maybe a librarian might not use these three keywords together, but I did because I'm crazy that way. But basically the way this application works is we do our initial search and then we have this ability to screen citations in terms of how well they work. So in this case, I have the epidemiology of anal cancer, which is certainly related to HPV, but doesn't really tell me much about vaccination programs. But I go through until I get 10 good ones, and then I can actually see, well, these are the good ones, these are the bad ones. And I always go back and take a look, why I think it's good or bad. But most importantly, then I can take a look at how well it works. So in this case, I had to screen 23. I got 10 back that were good, so that's my ratio. But I can actually do these other variations of searches as well in terms of, HPV vaccination program, HPV, vaccination public, papillomavirus vaccine. I get back a bunch of stuff, actually pretty good results in terms of getting my good hits, but lots of other random extraneous hits too. So this is a framework in terms of making this work, and I'll be happy to take questions afterwards. But again, please hit that URL. Please use this. Please make me happy. Thanks.